I have had a phrase in my material when I teach photography. I've been doing teaching for 30 years. And it goes, ajattele mitä otat, ota mitä ajattelet ja ota riittävästi. And here, what it is in English. Think what you photograph what you think, and photograph enough images. This video is inspired by that and also inspired by a blog post on B&H website. They have a blog there that is called 30 things that you need to think before making an image. And this video is inspired by that because I've had the idea of making a video of this kind a long time. So, things that you need to think before you click the shutter, coming up. Hi there, my name is Peter Forsgaard and I am a professional photographer from Helsinki, Finland. And before we start talking about those reasons, let's hear what our sponsor is saying. This video is sponsored by the workshop that I will have with Matti Solanto and myself in August 2022. Have you ever wanted to spend a week just photographing? Guess what? You can do it in Helsinki in August 2020. We're having a workshop with Matti Solanto. And there he is, the man himself. So if you want to find out more, follow our YouTube channels and our social media accounts. More to come about the program and everything else. It's going to be exciting, right? Se on siinä. Okay, now that the word from the sponsor is done, let's dive in. The first one is, what is your subject? This is really important. You need to have a subject in your image. It can be something physical, it can be a thing in the scene, or it can be, of course, an abstract thing that you want to express your feelings with. But without either one of these, your image will be nothing. And that was also the number one on that B&H blog. And I think they have a very good point, because without a subject, your image will be very dull. Now let's go to the second one. And the second one is divided into different parts, because when you have the subject, whatever it is, then you need to make sure that the subject is obvious for the viewer. If it's not, then the image might be confusing. But then there's a question, how can I make my image so that the subject is obvious? And the first thing is light. And what has light got to do with this? Well, a photograph without any light is usually pretty dull. And I have a video about light over there if you want to watch it. The thing is that we see or tend to see the lighter part of the image first. So if you have a possibility to make your image so that the viewer eye is directed to the subject, so that the area where the subject is the lighter part in your image, that will make your subject really obvious. The second thing is the composition, which is of course really important. There are no specific rules that or strict rules that how you want to or need to make your composition. But we have to remember that there are certain things that make us like images that are or have a certain way of, or this composition is in a certain way. And that's really, really important. And I have a video about composition, so you might want to watch that too. I will link all these videos into the description, so don't worry. Just watch them after you watch this video. And then the third thing, how to make your subject obvious, is the use of depth of field. Nowadays it's very common and very fashionable to have a really wide open aperture and have a really nice creamy background. And yeah, that is okay. That's one way of isolating your subjects so that it will be obvious. And that's very much used, for example, in portraits when you want to blur out the background to blur out all the distracting elements. But to be honest, that's not the case always. You might want to have your subject so that the environment where the subject is, or the thing, or the whatever you're photographing, has a meaning. And usually an image like that, where you can also see the environment, the background, there's some depth of field, some blurry background, but not too much, so that you can actually see what's behind the subject. So it's part of the story. And that's a lot harder to do. It's easy to just, make the background blur, just, blur it out and that's it. But, It's one way, but don't forget that bokeh and all that is quite a new concept. If you watch the old street photographers' work, they used mainly f8 and had a lot of depth of field. And that's how you master the thing, to add to your subject the environment and so that it has a story, so it has a meaning. And that's something that you really should consider doing sometimes. It's not always the question of shallow depth of field. That's only one part. Don't forget that. Then number 3, you need to ask the question, who is this photograph for? It might be just for you, as a memory, and don't underestimate a photograph as a memory, because we need to document our everyday life, and those images doesn't have to be the best in the world. Of course, if you can make them really great photographs too, for the wider audience, by all means do that. But it doesn't have to be. If it's a memory of you being somewhere, your great kids growing, your kids doing stuff, your family doing stuff, your grandparents, whatever it is, those are really precious images. And that is a good reason for an image, if it's a memory. And also, travels and where you go, what you do, because that's something that we professionals usually forget to document our life and our own life, And, we're too busy documenting other people's lives, so we forget our own. And I think that's something that at least I need to be a lot better. I used to do that when the kids were small, but now I very seldom document our life anymore. And that's a pity, and that's also one very good reason. But we have to remember that those images might not be something for others. They are just our personal images, and they might, the meaning of an image might change in the future. Like, let's say 50 years from now, when we're not here, and our ancestors, or it's not ancestors, but our kids and their kids, and maybe even their kids, are looking at those images. They look totally different things on those images. It's the same thing when we look historical images. There are different things that are interesting in those images that are interested in an image that we take right now. Don't forget that. If it's a memory, it's totally fine. Doesn't matter what kind of image it is. It's most likely fine if you can feel the thing that you felt when you were taking the image, and it's precious for you, the subject or the place or the thing that you're photographing. Don't underestimate that. Document your life. If you are making an image for others, then you need to consider the 1 and 2 of this questions that you are asking yourself before clicking the shutter. Because then you have to think what others might see in that image. And if you want to tell a story, then you need to use tools inside photography that will tell that story to the viewer, to someone you don't even know or they don't know you. The story has to come through in order an image to be good or great, actually. And that's one important thing. Of course, an image can be just a pretty a piece of art, like landscape photographers many times do. They are masters of light and masters of composition, and they wait for the time, for the perfect time and everything like that, and then they make a very pretty image of a scenery. Of course, it can also be a documentary because the surroundings are changing all the time, especially if you're doing cityscapes. Then, documenting that and telling a story of a change could be something. But then you have to think of the places where you photograph, which we will come to the next one. That is the right time. Be at the right time, at the right place is one important thing. Because sometimes the light might be totally bad and our subject won't come through. It's not at its best with bad lighting. And this might be a lot of questions to ask, and especially the blog post that, of course, I will link in the description. There's 30 questions. And I will talk about that, how that even is possible to ask 30 questions before clicking the shutter. We need to go to the kind of a small conclusion. What are the main things that you need to consider? And that's what, why, and how. Those are the things that you need to ask. And remember these 3 words: what, why, and how. Why you want to make the image is the first question. You have a subject, and then you have, actually the second question, you have the subject, and then you want to ask yourself why I want to make this image. Is it a memory? Do I tell a story to others? Or whatever it is. Then the third one is how to photograph it so that your idea goes through to the viewer's eye and to the viewer's mind, and the viewer is interested in your photograph. That's one also important thing. So what, why, and how is important. I know this might be overwhelming. You need to ask a lot of questions before making an image. And of course, in the beginning, it might be that it's too much. You're thinking too much, and then you will, lose the image. The same thing when you're driving a car, for example. When you're approaching a crossroads, if you start thinking everything that you have to take into consideration when you are approaching a crossroads when you're driving, you will have an accident. Most of the stuff that we do are kind of like subconscious. Because we have experience, we just make the decisions in a fraction of a second. And the same applies with photography. When you're experienced, you have been asking all these questions beforehand, then you can just ask or answer them in a fraction of a second. Yeah, that's the way it is. And most of you might even do that already, because I have a lot of experienced photographers watching my videos. But of course, there are some that are new into photography and just got their first camera. But there is also another good thing about asking these questions, and that is it will slow you down a bit. When you start thinking more, it will slow you down a bit. But that's not a bad thing. Of course, it depends on the thing of the things you photograph. And some of the thinking can be done beforehand. You might plan your shoot, your portrait shoot. You might plan your landscape shoot. Looking at the maps, where should I go, and where's the sun, and how's the light that day? What's the weather? All that can be considered beforehand. That's also thinking, because it doesn't mean that when you see something, you have to do all the 30 questions that was in the B&H blog post. But I hope this video was helpful for you, and there will be links to the videos that I've mentioned in this video. Here are some more for you to watch. But hey, thanks for watching, and bye for now.